Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Newsline at Noon, police confirm a heavily decomposed body found in southern Korea almost 6 weeks ago is that of fugitive Sewol-ho ferry owner Yoo Byung-eun. The UN Security Council unanimously adopts a resolution demanding unrestricted access to the crash site of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 and calls for a thorough international probe into the case. Plus, in their first meeting with Korea's new finance minister, the leaders of the nation's biggest conglomerates expressed their concerns over his plan to tax companies with large cash reserves. These stories and more on Newsline at Noon.
It's noon Tuesday, July 22nd here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Ju.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this lunchtime, police have confirmed that a body found in southern Korea is that of Yoo Byung-eun, the billionaire owner of the Sewol-ho ferry that sank back in April.
The 73-year-old's badly decomposed body was discovered well over a month ago in a plum orchard in that region, although authorities only confirmed his identity a few hours ago. Choi You-sun reports.
The practical owner of the Sewol-ho ferry that sank in April, killing more than 300 passengers, has been found dead.
On the evening of July 21st, the National Police Agency informed us that the DNA from a body found in Suncheon matched to that of Yoo Byung-eun's.
While waiting for the final forensic results, authorities also confirmed that a fingerprint taken from the body found in a field in Korea's southwestern city of Suncheon on June 12 also matched to that of the 73-year-old. Shortly after the sinking of the Sewol-ho ferry on April 16th, a massive manhunt was launched for Yoo and his family members on possible charges of embezzlement and criminal negligence. Yoo is the former head of Sewol Group, which is the predecessor of the Sewol-ho ferry operator. Authorities, meanwhile, still don't know when or how Yoo died, but they found bottles of alcohol, a health product made by a company linked to his religious group, and parts of his book near his badly decomposed body. Although it took nearly 40 days to confirm Yoo's identity, the prosecution and police now face public criticism for wasting more than a month searching for a dead man. Unaware of Yoo's whereabouts, prosecutors renewed a 6-month arrest warrant for Yoo earlier this week. With news of the ferry owner's death, attention now shifts to the prosecution's investigation into finding the Yoo family at fault for the ferry accident and providing compensation for the victims. Authorities are still hunting for Yoo Byung-eun's eldest son, Tae-gyun, who has a $98,000 bounty on him. Choi You-sun, Arirang News.
The United Nations Security Council has unanimously backed a resolution condemning last week's downing of a Malaysia Airlines plane in eastern Ukraine, which killed all 298 passengers on board. The move comes as pro-Russia separatists have finally allowed investigators access to the bodies of the victims and the plane's black boxes. Suncheon has the details.
The UN Security Council resolution over the downing of MH17 calls for international investigators to have unrestricted access to the crash site and demands a ceasefire between Ukrainian forces and pro-Russian rebels to ensure a safe inspection in the area. Australian Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, who drafted the resolution, addressed the Council, condemning the grotesque violations at the site.
It demands that safe, secure, full and unrestricted access to the crash site be provided so the investigating authorities can carry out their work. Mr. President, the message from this Council to those who were responsible for this atrocity is definitive. You will be held to account for your actions.
Amid mounting pressure from Western nations over its possible involvement in the downing of the passenger jet, Russia also voted in favor of the resolution. The vote came as a train carrying the remains of the majority of the victims left the crash site to the Ukrainian city of Kharkov. From there, a Dutch aircraft is set to fly the bodies to the Netherlands, where the largest number of victims came from, to begin the forensic identification process. The separatists also handed over the 2 black box flight recorders from the aircraft to Malaysian authorities, who said the recorders were in good condition. They hope the devices will help detail what exactly happened at the moment Flight 17 was shut down. 손정인, Arirang News.
And in light of the recent events in eastern Ukraine, the United States has put out clearer guidance about the areas where commercial aircraft are banned from flying. Airlines have been prohibited from entering the airspace over Crimea since April, but the downing of Flight 17 prompted the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration to expand the advisory to cover the area of the crash as well. The guidelines extend to a total of 6 countries, including North Korea, which the FAA warns could launch ballistic missiles without prior notice. The others on the list are Ethiopia, Iraq, Libya, and Somalia. And in other news, Finance Minister Choi You-sun has been busy since taking office last week, meeting with the central bank governor on Monday and with business leaders today. The business leaders used the opportunity to raise concerns about hints the new finance minister has been dropping about targeting the high reserves of the nation's biggest companies. Song Ji-sun reports.
The combined cash reserves of Korea's 10 largest conglomerates have doubled in just 5 years to $515 billion. That's 40% more than the government's budget for the whole of this year. Finance Minister Choi You-sun believes businesses must use these huge sums of money to reinvest, increase dividend payouts, and boost salaries in order to revitalize the economy. The dividend rate, the amount per share an investor receives when the dividend is paid, is lower in Korea than it is in any other emerging market. This means investors are getting lower returns as local companies stockpile their earnings. The minister has been pushing to tax companies that cling onto huge reserves. But businesses say the finance minister's plans would be akin to double taxation, stressing they plan to utilize reserves in the future.
Companies think it's unfair to be taxed again after paying corporate taxes. The reserves in various assets like properties and other non-cash forms are often used for investment down the road.
In their first meeting with the new finance minister on Tuesday, business leaders called for a more careful approach as there could be a number of unwanted side effects to the plans. They also called on Choi to push through reforms on deregulation. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, tucking your money away in a savings account is a low-risk way of building up your nest egg. But if that's your plan today in Korea, don't expect a very decent yield. Korean banks have recently been lowering interest rates on savings accounts. Uri Bank, one of Korea's 4 major banks, has cut its interest rate for time deposits by 0.1 percentage point to 1.9%, while Hana Bank has lowered its interest rate for some of its installment savings products to 1.8%. The cuts stem from a low key rate trend and market expectations that it might slide even further as growth slows in the nation. Korea's leading mobile messaging service, Kakao Talk, is diving into the mobile banking business when the firm's latest service launches, probably sometime in the fall. Kakao users will be able to send around $100 to friends or family at the push of a button. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Boasting more than 30 million subscribers in Korea, Kakao Talk is already the nation's most popular messaging service, with a hand in mobile games and free online call services. But it has even bigger things in mind. To keep user numbers up, Kakao Talk plans to expand its services to allow for money transfers as soon as this September. To use a so-called Katalk banking service, users will first have to download an application known as Bank Wallet Kakao. After going through a verification process, the user will be required to register their bank account details and set a password. After creating a virtual account and linking it to an actual banking account, people will be able to transfer around $100 each day and top off their accounts to about $500. The company has joined up with more than a dozen commercial banks and the Korea Financial Telecommunications and Clearings Institute to offer the service. Korea's financial regulator is currently looking into the companies to see if they meet security standards. It comes amid concerns of possible breaches from the hacking of passwords and personal data to the theft of authentication certificates. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, the Korean wave has sparked a global interest in all things Korean. And one area doing particularly well is the domestic cosmetics industry. The Korean Customs Service says over $140,000 worth of locally produced cosmetics were exported in June. This marks the highest monthly total since records were first collected in the year 2000. The record showing was mainly attributed to increased demand from China, taking up almost half of Korea's total cosmetics exports. Korean products account for just under 1/3 of China's cosmetics market. Industry experts say the Korean wave, driven by Korean pop music and dramas, have triggered explosive growth in the local cosmetics industry. Time now for a look through the international headlines. Some more of the international headlines we're following on this Tuesday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the News Center.
Eunice, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has joined UN Chief Ban Ki-moon to press for a ceasefire in Gaza.
That's right, Chinju. He headed almost immediately to that late-night meeting with the Secretary General after arriving in Cairo. And as Kerry was en route, U.S. President Barack Obama urged Hamas to accept the Egyptian-brokered ceasefire agreement. But aides admit it will be a difficult road ahead to reach a truce that works for both sides. Secretary Kerry also announced a humanitarian aid package worth $47 million to assist Palestinian refugees who fled their homes to escape the violence in Gaza. The Palestinian death toll has now well surpassed 500, a majority of them civilians. The UN says more than 100,000 Gazans have been displaced. And in Monday's attacks, at least 5 people were killed and some 70 others wounded when Israeli tank shells struck a hospital in central Gaza. The Israeli military said it was targeting a cache of anti-tank missiles nearby. Palestine's health ministry said the strike hit the 3rd floor of the hospital, which housed operating theaters and an intensive care unit. And it is in this context that global concern is growing in regards to the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. Thousands of demonstrators expressed their outrage against the Israeli offensive in cities stretching from Paris to Tokyo and Buenos Aires to Kashmir. 15,000 protesters turned up in London alone over the weekend to call for justice and freedom for Palestine. Angry crowds were also observed in Turkey for consecutive days, condemning what they perceived as Israel's indiscriminate killings. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department has issued a travel warning for Israel and the West Bank, discouraging any non-essential travel to those areas, in addition to the existing warning on the Gaza Strip. And the death toll from Typhoon Ramasun in China continues to climb as floods and landslides triggered by the storm create a deadly mess in Vietnam. Chinese state media reports 26 people have died and 25 are missing in the provinces of Hainan, Guangdong, Yunnan, and Guangxi, after the strongest storm in 4 decades pounded the southern region with violent winds and downpours. China's Ministry of Civil Affairs says more than 8 million people were affected as electricity and water supplies were also cut. The storm then headed to Vietnam, making landfall in Lang Son province over the weekend near the border with China. At least 12 people are said to have died there as Ramasun barreled through homes and crops. 2,000 homes were evacuated on the threat of flooding. And finally, Indonesia's election commission is on course to release the official results of the country's tight presidential race as early as this evening, despite calls by one of the two candidates to postpone it. The camp of former Army General Prabowo Subianto had argued there was evidence of, quote, massive voter fraud and called for a revote in areas including Jakarta, East Java, and Central Java. But the election body, also known as KPU, rejected the call, arguing it had already addressed recommendations by a state-run supervisory board. Jakarta Mayor Joko Widodo is widely expected to be declared the next leader of the world's most populous Muslim nation. Outgoing President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono urged the loser to accept the outcome to avoid violence. And Bolivia's President Evo Morales said he will expand coca production if he is re-elected to a third term as the country's leader. While traditionally cocoa leaf is used in religious rituals, it can also be used to make cocaine. Morales was re-elected the head of Bolivia's largest union of coca growers and said the country needs a new law concerning coca production. Current law allows nearly 30,000 acres of coca leaf to be grown for traditional use. One proposal would expand that permitted acreage to more than 49,000 acres.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at Noon with Mark Broom and Jin-ju.
I'm Jin-ju with
Market researcher, strategy analytics said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about 11.
A Korean institute has issued a stark warning about the rise in greenhouse gases in the nation. Start cutting them now or more than 130 people will die every year as a result between the years 2051 and 2060. This is nearly 7 times more than the heat-related deaths recorded between the years 2001 to 2010. Korea's National Disaster Management Institute analyzed possible climate change scenarios and population numbers to come up with the figure. If climate trends continue at their current rates, the institute says Korea would experience at least one 10-day span per summer where temperatures exceed 33 degrees Celsius from the year 2051 to 2060. From 2001 to 2010, there were 4 days in total. Doctors in Korea say it's becoming more difficult to effectively treat the Helicobacter pylori infection, the strongest known risk factor for gastric cancer. A medical team at the Asan Medical Center in Seoul said Tuesday that of the 400 patients that have been given antibiotics to treat H. pylori since last year, only 68% of them saw the bacteria have been eradicated. This is about 20% lower than 15 years ago. The medical team attribute the decrease to the bacteria's growing resistance to one of the 2 key antibiotics used to treat it. Gastric cancer or stomach cancer is second leading cause of cancer-related deaths worldwide.
Now to some more health news, but slightly more positive. Now, breast cancer doesn't normally cause symptoms at first, and because of its complex structural characteristics, it's usually quite difficult to detect in the very early stages. But local researchers say they have developed a new technology that can accurately detect abnormalities within the breast much more quickly. Our Connie Kim has more.
Breast cancer is the most common cancer in women worldwide, but its survival rate when diagnosed in the early stages is close to 100%. The problem is that it's hard to detect in its initial phase with the existing diagnostic system. The internal breast is a complex area made of muscle, glandular tissue, and fatty tissue, which makes it much more difficult to spot cancer cells hidden inside with two-dimensional X-ray images.
Mammogram images show the breast tissue with overlapped layers, and even if you do spot something suspicious, it is hard to determine whether it is breast cancer.
Local researchers have developed diagnostic equipment that can see the internal breast tissue in 3D. The device takes 15 X-ray pictures of the breast, each with a different incline of 3 degrees. Then software synthesizes the photos in a 3D stereoscopic image, enabling doctors to see the breast tissue in great detail.
Previously, we had to depend on just one picture, but this gives us an image that shows dozens of layers together. It gives us a 30% higher chance to detect cancer compared to the current method.
There are currently over 16,000 women in Korea who are living with breast cancer, with the number increasing steadily by 10% each year. The new diagnostic method will be developed further and is expected to be commercialized by the end of 2015. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now it's getting pretty warm now in Korea, and as the mercury rises in the summer, more and more people, in Korea especially, scurry indoors to the comfort of an air-conditioned movie theatre. And what better place to catch a movie than the now open Busan International Film Festival, otherwise known to fans of film around the world as Pfan. Our Park Ji-won reports.
This is the 18th annual edition of Pfan, one of the nation's largest film festivals, along with others in Busan and Jeonju. But Pfan sets itself aside from the pack by being Asia's largest genre film festival, one that specializes in more diverse films ranging from fantasy and sci-fi to horror films.
I'm a big movie fan, and this is my 3rd time at Pfan. Although I'm not into thrillers, this film festival has its own unique attractions and colors, which is why I'm back again this year.
I'm a horror movie fan. I watch every horror movie I can find, especially anything Korean or Asian. So this is a good place to watch movies like that.
Film director Kim Seung-hyuk, whose thriller Nothing Lost made this year's World Fantastic Cinema section at Pfan, is thrilled just to be there.
It's an honor that my film is being presented in Pfan's World Fantastic Cinema section, which introduces the newest genre films. I used to be a big fan of genre films and never imagined my film would be shown here.
Pfan this year will feature 210 films from 47 countries. In its main competition section, 12 films are up for the Busan Choice Award. A melodramatic horror film from Argentina called Darkness by Day, and a Chinese film delving into the world of hypnosis called The Great Hypnotist are 2 being featured. And an American film, Time Lapse, is highly imaginative. It's about a camera that takes pictures 24 hours into the future.
The list of fantastic film festivals begins in Europe. Pfan is similar in size to Spain's Sitges Film Festival, and we have amicable relations with them. This year we focused on discovering and introducing genre films from Latin America, China, and Southeast Asia.
Of the more than 200 films at the festival, 43 are world premieres and 68 of them are Asian premieres. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Well, the scorching heat will continue for the southern provinces today, with the high in some areas down south soaring to mid-30s. And as we can see, heat wave advisories and watches are still in effect for most inland regions. So be sure to stay away from the heat, and pretty much the whole nation can expect to have another hot and humid day. But for the upper provinces, we have monsoon rain in the forecast from this afternoon. It's going to come down hard as we get closer to midnight, and it's likely to rain heavily till tomorrow morning. So a heavy rain watch could be issued in those areas. And with the clouds and rain, Seoul and the surrounding areas could have a bit cooler afternoon highs today. So let's take a closer look at those numbers. The afternoon high in Seoul will rise to 29, while Daegu will climb to 35, and Gwangju and Busan will have a daily highs of 32 and 29 respectively. And for other regions, it looks like Jeju Island and Dokdo should see highs of 30, Daejeon should rise to 31, while Mount Kumgang tops out at 22. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Mark and I'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Thank you for watching.